My whole adult life, the work that I do was always tied to my self-worth. And so when my work bottomed out, my self-worth bottomed out. I was naive to think if you have the best ideas and you're qualified and you just talk about policies, you can win. But it got really ugly and my family got brought into it and things were said about me that weren't even true. But in politics, those negative ads work the numbers. And being honest of what you can actually do and what you can't do. City government, local government, we can't fix SNAP benefits. We just can't fill that hole, and we have to be honest about that. 26th Street, which is predominantly Mexican neighborhood, is the highest grossing receipts that we get, tax receipts, outside of Mag Mile in the whole city of Chicago. Magnificent Mile has your Louis Vuittons, your Gucci's, all the luxury store, right? And 26th Street, that has bakeries and dulces and taquerias and all these things, are second to
That's
Magnificent
amazing.
Mile,
Wow.
right?
Yeah,
and a
that's
close
huge.
second. So they are the economic engine of this city.
So can you talk a little bit about that?
And if you don't like it, well, that's on you. That's a you problem, not a me problem.
Welcome to Disrupt the Podcast with your co-hosts, Andrés and
Eloiza Domingo.
where we challenge conventional thinking and we look at the new ways that are shaping our future.
We're so excited today because guess where we are? We are in downtown Chicago at the City Hall with a very, very special guest, and we're going to have her introduce herself in just a second. But we're going to be talking about the disruption of municipal government, which is something that I'm going to learn a lot about, today, which is an exciting topic. But before we go on, this is actually a friend and colleague of yours, Andrés. So why don't we start there?
Yeah, so Anna and I met through a program called Leadership Greater Chicago, which is a very important organization that's been around for many years, and it's relevant to this conversation about municipal government. So we met through that program, and then we became friends. No one thinks about municipal government as being a disruptive force or really, something that is full of innovation. But Anna is a disruptor, and Anna is an innovator, and so therefore we had to have her on the program. So I'm very excited to have you here with us today. In a moment, you're going to tell us your role, but for everybody to understand your role, here we are talking about municipal government. What does municipal government mean, and what is its role in our lives today?
Thank you for having me. And it's funny, I didn't ever really see myself as a disruptor until you asked me to be on the pod. And when I was thinking about, when you were explaining about how you were highlighting all these different areas as disruptors, I was like, oh, I'm honored, actually.
Wow.
Absolutely.
So here we
Yes.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah, so first, municipal government is a fancy word for your local government. So we actually touch your lives probably more sometimes in the state or federal. Maybe not right now with federal, but definitely. So think about if you're walking your dog to a park, those dog parks, or you're taking your kids to the playground. That's local government. We fund a lot of those play lots. Or if you're driving into work and we're filling those potholes, or you see police department or fire department, that's local government. Your schools, even how we pick up your garbage. But the city budget, property taxes, all those things are really determined by your local government. And I became fascinated with this because I was working with Mayor Emanuel. That's how I even got into kind of Chicago local government. And I learned, wow, we touch your daily lives and you don't even know about it. And so it's something that I'm really passionate about because the impact we can have to better their lives is instantaneous. You say, we want to create this play lot, we're creating that play lot. And so I think it's really important for people to understand that. And we don't always teach civics like we should in this, in government or about local government. And that's something we're working on too. I'm happy to talk about later.
All right, so now you set the stage, but now let's talk about your role. And you didn't just happen to just walk into this office. How did you get into this role? And actually, as a fellow city council member myself, which is not your role, but as an elected official, what does it take to be in this role? What is it that you do here?
Yeah, so the city clerk is unique here in Chicago. It's a citywide elected position. So last election, I got 450,000 votes. No big deal. And which is great because it means that we are hopefully doing something great here and serving.
That was for your second term.
Yeah, my second term, correct. And so happy to be a citywide elected and be able to serve. I always think of myself as a public servant. I don't like the word politician. We can get into the context of that, but I do feel like called to serve. And so as a city clerk of Chicago, I have some responsibilities set by city ordinance and state statute. One is we have a wheel tax. So if you want to drive in the city of Chicago, you have to pay this fee, and that goes into our road fund. So we basically pay to pave 4,000 miles of road every year. And then our other part is we are really the archive of the city council. We are the transparency arm of city council. So fun fact, do you know how many city council members we have?
Close.
We have 50. We are one of the largest city councils in America.
Yeah, in my city council, in Highland Park, we have 7.
Okay,
Okay,
so
wow.
probably same headaches, but just more people. And we are actually responsible for all the city ordinances. So I'm always at the city council meetings, and we make sure that the public knows what's happening. And we are doing a huge council modernization that I'll talk a little bit about that too. And then, lastly, besides, bringing in $140 million of revenue every year, that's what we bring through the wheel tax. I've also created the first ever municipal ID card along with community. So this is the first government ID, library card. It's a CTA transit card and prescription discount card all in one.
CTA
it's free.
being?
CTA being our trains and our buses. And it's free. And we have over 150,000 Chicagoans that have the City Key card. And it started with community-based organizations advocating for over 10 years that they really wanted a municipal ID card for our reentry community, domestic violence survivors, LGBTQ, undocumented, homeless, folks that needed an ID to get services, to get temporary housing, to use it to enroll their kids in Chicago public schools. And so very proud of that program.
And all that is in one card?
And all that is in one card, exactly. We were able to innovate
convenient.
and bring those technologies together. And also, I think what's really important and what I do here at the City Clerk's office, I'm an advocate. And I try to use this platform to do the most good. And I remember a city council member once at my budget hearing told me that I need to stay in my own lane and just sell city stickers. Well, I feel, yes, I won't mention his name, but what I feel is if you have a platform to do good and people are coming to you with great ideas from the community, it's our responsibility to listen and take that into action. And so really good policy is from the ground up, and everything we've been able to do has been community-led.
It's interesting because, as you were mentioning, we had talked about this card. You had shared that with me. I kept saying, oh, that's so convenient, and hearing it from you, it's really interesting because originally I thought, well, that's super convenient, and of course you're leveraging the digitization, kind of tech, but it sounds to me the push was around kind of dignity,
Yes.
and equality,
Yes.
and access. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I think if you think about it, we have the dignity of a state ID or a driver's license that we can flash around and get to and from, and we kind of forget about it. And then when you hear stories from a lot of our Chicagoans that can't access services, get into buildings without an ID, be able to get housing, a job, a utility bill turned on, many things, even sports. Chicago youth need IDs for a lot of the sports programs here.
That's right.
And so if you think about just like that is a privilege. And so how do we make sure that other folks have that privilege and dignity?
Yeah.
And even a local bank here told me that because of the City Key card, they now have $1.5 million of deposits of new folks enrolled into their bank.
That's amazing.
Then they can think about getting a loan or savings. And so we can get a lot of our folks banked, which opens a whole nother access to the card. So this was something that I've been always passionate about, is showing up for community, whether it's that or our fines and fees work. So a lot of our families were coming to us in debt. And we were putting people, the city was doing this to people, that if you don't have your city sticker, it's $200 tickets per day that we were giving people. So I met a bus driver, a CTA bus driver, who had $5,000 in city sticker ticket debt. The city required him to put half down to get on a payment, just to get on a payment plan. And when he didn't do that, they suspended his driver's license and his CDL, and he lost his job. So that is not the role government should play. And so we tackled a lot of those issues and got a lot of policies changed and created payment plans as low as $10 for 36 months. We created a reduced term city sticker as low as $32 that people could do every 4 months. We created the first ever amnesty plan. So for 1 month in 2019, and then we just did it in April, we forgive your debt. You come in and you buy your city sticker, and we'll forgive, a ticket, we'll forgive back charges, late fees. And we saw $1.6 million in new revenue and 15,000 people come into compliance in 1 month.
Wow. So that was a win-win, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's huge.
Completely.
And again, it's looking at how we do things differently in government. And when I think about the word disruptor, which I'm now honored to say that I am, is we need to challenge certain notions of government. We need our young people to choose this career path to be entrepreneurs, to be innovators, to ask hard questions, to be curious about why do we still do it that way? And who is it serving and who is it not?
Yeah. And also I love, you being driven by purpose and values and, equity and really thinking how can you be inclusive in all the ways that you talked about. But you got to make it work.
Yes.
So let's get a little geeky here.
Okay.
This card seems like a magic card because I can use it as a library card. I can use it to go on the CTA. I can use it to identify. Like,
Get a bank account.
How did you get all that stuff in that one card? That's
Well,
a lot of entities you got to work
yes. So by the grace of God and a great team, I have an amazing team that we work with, and they got really curious about asking questions with different partners. So Chicago Transit Authority that runs our trains, we found out that they have the same vendor that we had, that we were able to select. And because of that relationship, we were able to think about technologies integrating. The libraries, we had an amazing commissioner that also thought outside the box and was open to how do we make this work too. So we actually print the municipal ID card on the CTA card. So it's already on there. And then we use the library card numbers to print on the bottom.
Okay.
And so we were able to make that. Then the prescription discount card came, and that's also a barcode on the back. And so we were able to think about these partnerships in certain ways. Now we're talking to Metra of how this can be the senior ride card as well.
with. Metro is a rail.
Metra also is like a rail that offers senior discounts or free pass for seniors. And so we're constantly evolving on the way that we're thinking. Let me give you another example of our city council modernization. When I came in here, it was a very paper-based system. In fact, I take a paper roll call, 50 city council members, and constantly doing a paper roll call. It took 3 days for my team to upload the votes. So there was no transparency in that. There's no accountability. Our residents don't know what's happening. And so in the last 5 years, we've transformed that. We're the first major city to have electronic voting on our iPads. So you can see in real time how your council members are voting. We are now taking digital copies of paper ordinances so that on the back end, our team can get that instantaneously on our platform to show its progress. You can see when something's been introduced, the next committee it's going to, what the agenda is, and so our public can follow along. And by hopefully in 2027, we'll be completely paperless and a digitized system living in the cloud. Now, that almost killed me, that project, because you have to think about buy-in from everyone, the public, 50 city council members, departments of saying, well, this is how it's always been done. And why do we have to use technology? Why do we have to embrace it? Technology can be a tool to help our teams work a little bit smarter, not harder. And so change management almost has killed myself and my team. But if you can build that trust and you can show people what it's going to do and bring them along the way, ask their feedback, you use design thinking, right? Use these practices that the corporate world has used so well and bring it in here to incorporate into the government, and it can work.
Wow. So, there's so much obsession with what's happening at the federal level, and there's some very important things going on. But listening to you, the everydayness of local government, and also listening to you, sort of that local government can be kind of sexy. I mean, you're talking about digitization and the cloud, and you haven't mentioned artificial intelligence, but I imagine that that's also in the works as what you're doing. So help our listeners really understand, why it's important to pay more attention to local government and the ways in which local government can be functioning, like you already described here in Chicago, in a more innovative way, and the roles that they could play, either as citizens or even residents, but also as people that could aspire to this kind of work because of its meaningfulness.
Well, I think the only way government works in the future is by collaboration. We don't do this work in a silo. We were able to get philanthropy support, corporate support, and government and community-based organizations all at the table to have these conversations and leverage the tools they had. And so I think that is incredibly important because we can learn from one another. Let me give you an example of how we're showing up locally right now. With everything happening federally, We see ICE raids in a lot of our immigrant communities. People are fearful. And what's happening to our business corridor is devastating. And so we are trying to think innovatively of how to show up right now for our businesses that I would say it's worse than the pandemic.
And businesses in particular neighborhoods?
In particular, Latino neighborhoods and immigrant communities right now, because a lot of folks are afraid to come out. And so we have actually reached into our network to do these shopping with solidarity walks. And I heard from the community that a lot of Latinos and leaders in the community are the first on the scene when ICE is there, and they're exhausted, constantly being there to protect and show up for their businesses. And a fun fact for those listening that are Chicagoans, 26th Street, which is predominantly Mexican neighborhood, is the highest grossing receipts that we get, tax receipts, outside of Mag Mile in the whole city of Chicago.
Magnificent Mile.
Magnificent Mile.
Being what?
Downtown. So when you come to visit
Where all
Chicago,
the luxury stores
Magnificent
are.
Mile has your Louis Vuittons, your Gucci's, all the luxury store, right? And 26th Street that has, bakeries and dulces and taquerias and all these things are second to
That's
Magnificent
amazing.
Mile,
Wow.
right?
Yeah,
and a
that's
close
huge.
second. So they are the economic engine of this city. And so we went out with the former CEO of Foot Locker, Mary Dillon, came with us. We went with corporate partners, philanthropy, labor, and we brought folks on this walk with us to use our dollars where our values are. Because you can show something small you can even do in your community of shopping shows your values. And we want to make sure these businesses survive what is happening that have been there 35 years, 25 years, and are family owned and actually passed down to the next generation, which is wealth creation for communities. And so that is another innovative way of saying, how can we think, even if just a small step, of bringing collaborations together to innovatively think about how to solve problems. And we're going to have to, as local government, solve bigger problems if you see kind of this reorg of the federal government pushing a lot more to the state and the local. We're going to have to think more outside the box of how do we survive and keep delivering services. And one thing that brings me hope is there are civic leaders that feel the same way that I do, that are showing up with heart, like Leadership Greater Chicago, thinking about community first before self. And I think that's what is bringing me hope in a time that kind of feels very heavy and dark.
Yeah, Andres oftentimes brings our guests. So you all know each other, and I'm kind of like sitting here, like, wow, I forget that we're on a podcast. So I'm literally sitting here, Anna, being like, wow. But the amazing thing about being a disruptor is that you change things up, you stir, the pot. You also have to be relatively vulnerable, but then you also expose yourself to a level of scrutiny because you believe in what you're doing. And this is like a legit question, because for me as a woman of color like you and a working mom, how do you deal with the scrutiny though? How do you just keep going?
I think there's a lot of things. First of all, I think that we don't talk about failure enough as leaders. And I'm seeing this play out with young people that I mentor, and even my own niece and nephews being afraid to take a risk, even being afraid to apply to college because they're afraid of the rejection or the failure. Yeah. And what I would say first is I did not get here 0 to 100 overnight. This has taken a lot of different times, a lot of private failures and public failure. Yeah. And we have to talk about that and name it. And so there are things that I've done in my leadership journey that even the last 8 years of when I was an executive, I remember coming in just Leadership Greater Chicago. It was my first year as city clerk. And I was, I think, the youngest one in the group. And I had to, let someone go early on in my team, like the first 6 months. And I was reeling. I didn't know how to actually lead. And I remember being vulnerable, asking someone in Leadership Greater Chicago for their advice. And actually also starting to go to therapy for the first time in my adult life at 32. I had never, I came up in a family that said, pray, and we were Catholic, and keep your faith, and you'll work itself out, right?
That's right.
And then I've had very public moments of failure. I ran for statewide office, Secretary of State. And I was naive to think, and I've been in politics for a long time, but still naive to think if you have the best ideas and you're qualified and you just talk about policies, you can win. But it got really ugly. and my family got brought into it, and things were said about me that weren't even true. But in politics, those negative ads work the numbers. And I remember losing. And when I lost, I started to believe a little bit about what they were saying about me. And I was afraid to show up in my own circles because I was afraid, what did Andres think of me? Was he ashamed or disappointed in me? Did he think that about me? And I kind of had to really rebuild from there myself and my self-worth, because my whole adult life, the work that I do, being city clerk or being my professional, was always tied to my self-worth. And so when my work bottomed out, my self-worth bottomed out because I was so intertwined of who I am with the identity of what I do. And so it was through amazing friends, my faith, really my friends put a mirror to my face and reminded me of who I am. And then my faith, my therapist, and really digging in, and self-awareness as a leader too.
And I've seen that trajectory, and I know that you're stronger because of it. In what ways are you stronger because of it?
One, the self-awareness piece of how am I showing up, and what do I want my daughter to see, and what do I want the young women that have looked up to me. I wanted them to see me fail gracefully, that I wasn't going to be bitter. I didn't want to hold on to resentment or anger, because that doesn't even serve me, and it's not going to do anything to the person that made me feel that way. And I don't want to live in a place like that. I wanted to also how to dig deep for forgiveness of myself first, and letting go of the perfectionist piece as well, because there's so many demands you put on yourself. And I think that also comes from being, immigrant families and being the first to get to these milestones.
For sure.
I didn't want to disappoint people that put so much into me. And I think that was one of the biggest lessons I learned. And then also showing up as a leader. What kind of leader do I want to be? And workplace culture has been something I've really decided to invest in really intentionally the last 2 years, because I remember coming into the mayor's office and there wasn't a fund to support my Leadership Greater Chicago Fellowship. I had to pay out of pocket myself. And then luckily I was able to get some assistance from LGC, which I greatly appreciated, so I could be part of it. And now I want my team to be able to have those same investments. And yes, and learning the things that failure is okay, accountability, asking curious questions, collaborative teams, conflict resolution, how to communicate. Those things are not taught a lot of times in your workplaces. And so that was another experience of my failure that said, I want to be the leader that I always wished I had.
Think about the cascade, right? You got disrupted.
Yes, I got disrupted.
Right, by
Yes.
the loss, right? But you turned that disruption into an opportunity.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you actually brought disruption right back to City Hall by really looking at your team where you had authority and jurisdiction in a true talent development, career progression way that many times it has been absent in municipal government. And you brought in just a workforce strategy and investment into that. What has been the consequences of that as you have invested in your team as the workforce that you've been wanting to elevate?
Well, I will see this especially in diverse teams. I have ages from 25 to maybe 70-ish. I don't want to call it anyone that's maybe listening, and so you have all different neighborhoods, all different cultures, perspectives, and that can be a challenge or an opportunity, like you said. And so we did some surveys of what our team members were looking for. We established a team engagement committee that helped think about guest speakers that aligned with our values. We set values, we set a mission. We have the 4-star award that is highlighted by our values. And so we started putting more, and then our policies, our operations, how is that equitable? How is that fair? How are we having accountability, these feedback loops? And I've seen less conflict rising all the way to me. I used to get pulled in mediation all the time. And I spent mostly my days as a therapist, a counselor, or a mediator. And I couldn't get any work done, or my chief of staff. I've seen less of that. My team is now, especially my supervisors, I feel are empowered to take that on without me, which is wonderful to see. And I'm able to then to keep to the strategy of the work, keep building the relationships that we need to bring into the office. I've seen, that kind of rise. I feel it even walking around. And the sad part is what's happening nationally is coming down into your offices. Yeah. Whether you want to believe it or not, you need to recognize the stress, the anxiety, the fear, people not knowing if their jobs are safe because of the budget crisis we're in, even as a city. So you have to recognize that and then be honest of like, okay, maybe I need to alleviate some workload from people, or maybe I need to check in more often, or can we bring mental health specialist as a special guest speaker, which we had, and that was the highest ranking lunch and learn that we had the whole year.
Wow.
And so we're doing that again in November. We're going to have a virtual session with the mental health specialist to talk about stress and ways to handle stress going into the holidays. And so it's just being in tune with your workforce and asking, what is it that you need? How can I support you? And just a smile. Beginning of the day, I've started doing Monday motivations. A team member asked me, thought it would be a good idea. So now I send a quote with a little note from me every Monday morning. And people, just that simple act, people are responding to. And so I do birthday cards. I've done birthday cards for 8 years where I handwrite a little note to everyone on my team. And just like that small thing makes a difference.
Honestly, Ana, when Andrés was like, we have a government official that we're going to interview, I'm like, government?
And you're like, boring.
Well, it is not even just that. The word government any time these days, Ana, is a 4-letter word, for a lot of reasons. Because, like you said, people don't understand that municipal government is local government, or we really don't care or appreciate it, And so we think government, you're just this whole shebang of government, But you're making so
and
many
bad and toxic and corrupt
and toxic, and I don't like it, and I can't trust you. Yet here you are talking about all of these amazing things that you're trying to make change, you're trying to collaborate, but trust is a really critical component of that. You all know that we tend to pull stats, so we have this amazing stat. Gallup shows trust in local government, municipal government, hovering around the high 20s.
High though. High
But here you are, you've chosen this. You're an elected official. I love, by the way, the hair flip, 450,000 people. But yet you're choosing to be in a space where people intrinsically are not going to trust you. So talk a little bit about that and why, I think we know kind of why, we already see the spirit in it, but how are you, kind of attacking that particular part?
Yeah, and to fill it out,
sure.
Talk about the scrutiny also.
Yeah.
Right, because lack of trust, all the political things are going on, and then to Eloiza's question, right? Just what's the full panorama there that you look at?
Yeah, so, that is a scary statistic on trust in government, but I also understand, look at the federal level, what is happening. I'm angry. I'm furious. I'm seeing a lack of accountability, right? A lack of transparency, a lack of honesty, character. And then that can trickle down on everyone. And I started this with, I hate the word politician. If someone calls me a politician, I feel like they're saying a 4-letter word to me because I choose public servant. I feel like it's a calling that I was called to serve and do the greater good with how I choose to show up. And trust isn't built overnight. It takes decades, right? It takes so much time of showing up consistently. That's the one thing, even in my office, is my team has said, you have always been consistent. So they've begun to trust me because what I say, the words I say, my actions align. Yeah. And when we don't align our actions and our words, that's lack of integrity. And that's what my dad always told me, is like, the one thing people cannot take away from you is integrity. So unless you choose to give it up. And so I see a lot of leaders and civic leaders being called right now to be servant leaders and to keep showing up consistently and trying not to break promises and to being honest of what you can actually do and what you can't do. Because city government, local government, we can't fix SNAP benefits. We just can't fill that hole, and we have to be honest about that. We can't, fix certain things that are going to be up to the federal government, but we can be honest about policies we change, what we can do in our roles, what we can advocate for, what we can use our platform for. Those things can happen. And so as much as the trust is broken, and I probably could go find another career that's easier, I just feel like it's on us. We have to bridge that divide, and it's going to be on all of us. And unfortunately, if one person messes it up, they'll mess it up for the whole group.
Right.
But I'm not deterred. I want to continue to show up and do what I can. And I think I've also become to the conclusion that I'm going to lead how I lead. Authentic to me, that feels meaningful. And while people are giving press conferences or fancy words, and our politicians, and that's great, we need that, but I'm going to lead quietly too, and I think there's strength in that.
Absolutely.
And I think media also needs to cover more of the positive that's happening. And if they can lift up the positive that's also happening, then that can help build the trust. But I know that fear sells, and that's what people also want to see, fear and conflict. But if you dig deeper, you'll see that there are people out there trying to help and do what they can.
Yeah.
Yeah, you talk about things that you cannot do much about that are happening at the federal government place in terms of the budget, for example. I've heard you speak about thinking about your role as an executive leader, in terms of entrepreneurship. How do you bring that entrepreneurship mindset to this work here?
I think of that being an entrepreneur is that you can make more change on the inside than sometimes just protesting. Protesting is great, but if you could choose a career in government and then you can get a seat at the table with power, you can really make things happen. And I know you can, just the initiatives we've done, whether it's fines and fees reform, a next-gen city council working with Chicago Public Schools to teach local civics in the high schools and then bring them here to learn what we're talking about, to learn about compromising, to learn each other's stories, that you have a voice, you're empowered to use a voice. They pass their own ordinances, they vote on things, and then I introduce the ordinance for them at the end of this program. All of these things, you have to be scrappy, you have to have grit, you have little resources. A lot of my team members, especially on my senior leadership team, are doing 3 jobs or more. We're working with philanthropy, we're raising money, we're challenging the status quo, and we are also introducing ordinances to the council to change different policies and reforms. And so you have to be bold, you have to be unafraid, you have to have the data and research, and you got to build the coalition that's going to back you. So when I put an ordinance in, I know I've got 50 people right behind that ordinance that are going to make calls to their alderman, talk to their alderman, are going to help us get it passed. You can't do anything without relationships. That's probably number one thing I've learned being in this role, is relationships is key. With other electeds, with other philanthropy, with corporate, with our relationship, we've kept this relationship going over the last 8 years. And now we're having this conversation. So you can't burn bridges. You have to, remember to be kind, say thank you, and keep those relationships happening, because you never know where it's going to lead into great projects or magic.
This is probably the 3rd, 4th, 5th time, Anna, that you've talked about relationships and collaboration, and you specifically said here you can't burn relationships. One of the other relationships you can't burn is that with your family. You are also a 24/7 mom to a
Yes.
5-year-old, so a working mom just like me. And with the pressures that you and I feel, you're wanting to be accomplished and run this team, and you've got to come in here, but you've also got to make sure that the kiddo knows that, I love you and we're good and everything like that. That's a lot, right? So, and both you and I strive to make sure that we are models. I can already tell, you've not said this, but I can tell. You strive to be a model. You strive to show that it's okay to fail. It's also okay to push. It's okay to be bold. But, for you as a working mom, as a Latina, in a very exposed role, by the way, how are you? I feel like this is the $1 million question, and I actually hate asking women.
How do I do it all?
How do you do it all? I hate asking that question, but I have to ask it. How do you do it, right?
Well, one, I don't do it all.
Yeah, good, great.
That's the thing. That's the myth that I've learned quickly. And I don't do it alone. I have a village, which I'm very grateful for. And I have the privilege to build that village. We don't have any family here, but I've made family that feels like chosen family that has helped me in a bind. I've also had to break norms and bring my daughter. I remember when we were in virtual, we were doing virtual meetings during the pandemic, and I was at home with my daughter. She would often make appearances on the camera because I was at home without a lot of help, and my husband would be on a Zoom, and I would have to, have her on my lap. Or a budget hearing, I remember my babysitter had COVID and called me that morning, and my husband was traveling. I said, well, guess what? Rihanna's going to the budget hearing with our budget.
This early indoctrination,
yes,
there, right?
meeting. She has her iPad on or her iPad and earphones. It's like, you have to do what you have to do, and I don't apologize for that, because this is the balance of working parents. But I also try to have quality time with her. And we have to remember it's quality over quantity and those small moments. So I signed up actually as a Girl Scout troop leader, co-leader.
Wow, you added this to your repertoire here?
Yes, I said I could do one thing this year with her that could just be us. And she was so excited.
Oh, good.
And I went with her, we learned the Girl Scout song, and she was all about it.
Do you make everybody buy the cookies? Like everybody?
Well, it's happening.
Yeah.
This spring,
You
it's
signed up for
happening.
that.
It's
Yeah.
signing up. But you know what? I love seeing her in her own element, because we were learning about, again, we were making friendship bracelets, and each bead was something. And they said, what does honesty mean to you? And she would raise her hand for every single thing. I mean, she was the first one to raise her hand and go. And I was like, oh, wow, I'm making a little Anna. But it's what she sees. It's like she,
Yeah,
you know, I'll
absolutely.
take her a lot with me on Saturdays. She loves being in the community. She went to an event with me last night for the budget chairman's event. She had a princess crown and everything. But, you know, and he was happy that I showed up even with her. And so I expose her to a lot, because I want her to understand, you know, she has a lot of privilege growing up. She's going to be removed from what my husband and I, you know, I was first in my family to go to college. I think my parents made, you know, $50,000 together, raising 3 kids. And so I have, that really gave me a lot of resilience and grit and drive and ambition. And she's going to be removed from that. Yeah. She is very spoiled with being the youngest granddaughter and of, you know, all the family. And so I want her to go out with me and see what's going on too, and be exposed to different people and cultures, so that she can carry that compassion with her when she's older, being like, I want to get back too, just like I saw my parents do.
Yeah, and so let's talk about generations here, both from a family perspective and also from a political perspective. From a family perspective, reference your parents, and I want you to talk also more about what does it mean to be, you know, first generation, being Latina, being female, in this leadership role, and then you're also talking about how you're passing this on to your daughter. So I want you to talk about that. But if you could piggyback on that, and we really believe we're seeing a generational change nationally and locally in terms of leaders that are emerging. Just recent elections just happened, and you know, there's the political labels, but put that aside, there's just a generational shift that is going on. So talk about family generation, then talk about political generational shifts.
Well, I think that people and the powers that be that want no more D&I saw D&I in action yesterday, because we elected the first woman governor of Virginia, the second woman governor of New Jersey, and the first black woman in Detroit for mayor, and the first Muslim mayor in New York City. So you see that people aren't just kind of rejecting that there's still a pathway for different folks. So that makes me excited and encouraged. But where I grew up really says who I am. So I grew up in Granite City, Illinois, 5 hours south of Chicago, in a steel factory town. My grandfather was a steel worker. And my father's family came from Guanajuato, Mexico, through Colorado, ended up in St. Louis for the stockyards and the steel factories for work. I think my grandfather had an 8th grade education. My dad graduated high school, a little bit of community college, and settled into the trades as a painter, union painter. And then my mom grew up in East St. Louis, worked in a nonprofit. My grandmother actually was the first woman, one of the first women to work at City Hall in East St. Louis.
Wow.
A municipal worker. I found that out later, and I was like, Mom, why didn't you tell me that?
Yeah, that's cool.
But my parents really instilled in me at an early age of how to give back even when you didn't have a lot. And I remember we were part of this Mexican honorary commission that my great uncle started. My dad always did the Christmas baskets. And we always had, you know, my sister and I were there the night before putting them together and help dropping them off the next day. My parents were really involved in the church and just, you know, wherever they could. So I saw that from a young age. And I think that instilled in me who I wanted to be. And my dad, I remember saying, you're going to college, early age. You're going to college, you're going to be a lawyer. He wanted me to be a lawyer. I wasn't, I'm not. But he always said, this is where you're going to be. I remember I got accepted to U of I the summer going into college, and I had a gap. And my mom and dad went on a walk. And my mom's like, who's gonna tell her she can't go? We can't afford it. My dad said, no, we're gonna find a way. Little did they know, a week later, I got a call from a state representative. I'd applied for a scholarship and didn't remember it, but said, you come up, you're gonna get a scholarship from us. So I'm thinking $1,000 or whatever. It was free tuition.
Wow.
They were covering my tuition, and that's how I got to college. And I think because I've been given so much opportunity, that really has been the course of what I want to give back to others, especially first-gen college students. I have a soft place in my heart for them, because if you can get yourself from all other circumstances to there, we have to get that. We have to fulfill that dream for them.
Yeah, and actually a little anecdote, when you ran for a statewide office, I had introduced you early in the campaign to a first-gen Latina from Highland Park, Stephanie Diaz. And you really took her under your wing. And I remember she came to a town hall that I hosted online, and we were sort of waiting for the official start time, but you were already there early, and Stephanie was there. And there were other people, other adults on the screen, but you zeroed in on her immediately and said, who are you? And she said, Stephanie Diaz. And then you stayed with her, and you asked, well, tell me about you. Where do you school? What do you and you went right to the aspiration question immediately. And then when everybody came on and you greet everybody, you put the spotlight back on her. And I just met Stephanie Diaz. She's a wonderful young emerging leader. And then you went further, and then you invited her to come to a campaign stop that you were making within a few days. And then she got involved with your campaign, and she learned a lot because she had aspirations for political science and social justice and all those things, and you were really that role model for her. And then the capstone of that is the night of the election, which was a difficult night for you. It kind of moves me right now, but you asked Stephanie to introduce you.
I know.
Aww.
And Stephanie met the moment, and she killed it.
Killed it in front of Senator Duckworth.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's, the generations that you stepped on their shoulders and it moved, and then you reached down and you brought her right up, and she was in front of the TV cameras, she was on local TV because it was the night of the election, so all cameras are on, and of all the people that you're so networked, and you had a lot of powerful people in that room, and a lot of people that supported you and believed in you, but of all those people, you chose her to do the introduction.
And you know why I stayed with her even after that night is because she inspired me. When I told you about losing gracefully, it's because I want her to see that too. And I didn't want her to be shattered that this could not happen, because even though I couldn't break the glass ceiling of being the first woman Secretary of State, she can. Yeah. And so that's what I carry with me too, is that will be my legacy. When I am gone, long gone, and hopefully I'm 100, and I'm looking back at my life, it's the Stephanies and the Natalias and the others that I've helped plant a seed, and seeing their lives change drastically. Because when she has her college degree, that's going to change her whole family. That's going to change their whole wealth building. Yeah. And I know what that's done because I've done it for my family. And that's why I put so much pressure on myself to succeed, because it's not just my win. It's my dad, it's my mom, it's my nieces, it's my nephews. It's blazing a trail for our families that we're never in this world of power or money or in these rooms. And so that's why I take Stephanie with me.
Yeah, she's about to graduate very soon.
Aww.
I know. She's at a great
That's
school.
Amazing.
Yeah,
That's amazing. We've reached a time in our podcast where we do what's called Disrupt GPS. And it's where we say, what are the takeaways, for us? For me, you said earlier, I've never been called a disruptor. And Andres and I have had this title. We've worked with this disrupt title, and I think even for me, I'm like, oh yeah, this is how we define it. This is what a disruptor is. But it's interesting because even right now, you've actually disrupted that for me. I often think that disruptors kind of have it all, we got it all together, we know where we're going to accomplish this, and this is it, and this and this. I think one thing that you have so humbly and gracefully brought forward is that in order to disrupt, you actually have to be okay to fail. You have to also be okay to not go linear. And you have to be okay to say that's also okay, that all of that is okay, and that disruption is also really deliberate. So even conceptually, I'm sitting here and thinking, wow, like the entire disrupt GPS for me has actually kind of turned itself on its head because I'm sitting here listening, to you. So that to me is a big takeaway for me, and I'm actually going to take that into some of the other conversations that we have, because I think what at least for me I tend to do is I have these conversations with these disruptors, and we elevate and we look at accomplishment and yay, and it's all good. But what you've actually done is you've said, no, I've done that, but it wasn't that pretty all the time, and I think that that's really real. And I also think, as a woman of color, the other thing too is for you to also unapologetically bring the child. I think we as moms, I have seen moms put the kid on a Zoom call, and then it's like, I just don't have the babysitter, I'm really sorry. But I can almost see you, even though I haven't been on these Zoom calls, although I'd love to, I can almost see you being like, and we're going, so what was agenda B? But that unapologeticness, I think, is really critical, because there are going to be people on that Zoom call that see you act that way and see that as disruptive, and it changes something in them. So you have become typified, and normal, and it's like, oh, I can do that.
And
that
there will
okay.
be people on that call that will judge me too. That's
right.
Okay
You're
too,
right.
because I've learned to live with the haters as well. Yeah. And I don't read the comments anymore, because it's like, I know who I am. Yeah. I know what my purpose is. I know what my mission is. I'm focused on what I can do to help people. And if you don't like it or the way I lead, well, that's on you. That's a you problem, not a me problem.
Yeah.
Damn.
I know.
But it's taken me a long time to get there. Like, let me just say, it's taken me a long time to get there.
I will tell you, you're younger than both of us. And I don't know if I got there for a while. I mean, for a minute. So for me, that's my disrupt.
Yeah.
But I got there easier, faster, because people poured in so early. And I think because of the leadership journey so fast in leadership positions.
Yeah.
But I've learned that from others.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my disrupt GPS is, well, Anna and I have a lot of things in common in terms of our Latino background, the Leadership Greater Chicago connection that brought us together, but also we're both elected officials. Yeah. I'm in my second term also. It's a 4-year term. I am also the first ever Latino elected in the City Council of Highland Park in 152-year history. Wow. So, to have a Latina that I really admire, not only because of who you are as a person and as a general leader, but then in municipal government, right, is very inspiring, and to know that we are sort of in the same journey, in the same purpose, right, in our respective cities, and yet Highland Park is part of the greater Chicago area, and we can really continue learning from one another. So that's one of my GPS takeaways. The other one is you use the word entrepreneurship in the context of municipal government, and again, I'm relating as a council member of another government, municipal government, and I love that, right? Because so much of government often seen as, immobile or stuck in tradition or bureaucratic.
Yes.
Yeah. And you're actually in the heart of bureaucracy, because when it comes to permits and fees and all that, and
that's really boring.
It's boring, right? But you made it sexy. Right?
I get so excited when we're talking about our new platform we're getting, and I'm like, oh, and what can it do? And how does that work?
Because you're now showing that as much as it's public service, great, you said that so eloquently, but for those that really want to be creating something new and working with technology and inventing the new future and challenging the ways that we think and do things, what an exciting place for city government to be in. City government.
You're an incubator. You can take an incubator of ideas, and they're actually like a lot of free reigns. Like, there is bureaucracy you have to work against, but not to get to the evolution of it. We really toss around ideas and figure that out and bake them, and then we're like, we test our case theory, and we're like, this can actually work, and then we scale. I mean, we went from a next-gen civic engagement program with just a handful of schools to now 8 high schools but we've served over almost 1,000 kids, And we actually bid on a MacArthur grant this year for a $7 million grant to rethink civic education K through 12. We got almost to the semifinalist round. Almost to the finalist round. We got to semifinalist. And that was just all governmenty, city colleges, Chicago Public Schools, our office, Chicago Votes. Just on a whim, we're like, we think we could do this. And we got that far.
Yeah, and there's a lot of low-hanging fruit here because so little innovation has tended to happen in government.
Good point.
That for those people that really want to make a difference, where the field is ripe and the need is great, especially with all that's happening in the federal government, more is being pushed at local, and government's going to have to do more with less.
Yes.
Innovation and disruption is the name of the game to actually provide. So for those looking for a great job with a lot of opportunities to be a civic leader, to bring innovation, to bring technological know-how or policy know-how, and also to your point about even bringing management know-how and commitment to other people. You've been a real showcase for that, and I really know that you will. This episode will be a real inspiration to bring in new needed talent into municipal government that affects our day-to-day.
Thank you. I appreciate you both. Thank you for highlighting our work and what we're doing, and I wish you the best on this podcast. I can't wait to listen to some more.
Yeah. Well, and Anna, where can everybody find you?
Oh, yes. So if you want to engage at City Clerk on ChiCityClerk.com, you can find us on all the social medias.
I like Chi.
We're
I know,
City
like
Clerk.
Chi.
Yeah.
Feels hip, right?
And you yourself have a podcast.
Yes. My mentor, Connie Lindsay, and I, who Andres knows as well, we started Joy in the Breakthrough. So we're on all podcast platforms, and we're doing LinkedIn Lives. But really, we focus on leadership and then finding that joy in pivotal breakthrough moments where it almost crushed you, but you found your way back to joy through it. And so we've talked to many diverse leaders about their journeys and their stories and their evolutions. Because again, I think talking about failure, talking about leadership pivots is so important for people to hear. That again, you didn't go from here to there overnight. There was a lot of messy middle. And we kind of don't want to talk about that. We want this polished resume. And I just think that's so boring.
No, I agree.
That's been so overdone. Let's get real about this.
Well, and I can't help, now that you said the messy middle, I know that you and I talked about a model.
Andres came on our LinkedIn Live.
Yeah, but we also talked about a model about what it takes to get to the breakthrough.
Yes.
What was it that, and it was one of the things that I presented at Leadership Greater Chicago that's really stuck with you that you've actually implemented.
Yes, well, there's the forming of your team, the storming of your team, the norming of your team, then the performing of your team. And I remember when I talked to him at the beginning, I was like, I'm definitely in the storming. I formed the team. I'm never going to see the day of light out of storming. But I would say that my team now is like, we're norming / performing. We don't get it right all the time. I don't get it right all the time, and we're still constantly learning, but I feel like that's where the goal is, and it can get there. Yeah. You just have to be intentional, and you have to do the work.
How long did it take?
8 years. Well, we got to year 6. I felt like we were on our path. So just if you're a leader, just be patient with yourself.
Yeah.
Be patient with yourself. It's going to happen. Trust the process. Commit to a process. See it through. Be intentional. Have timelines. Have data markers, but be patient with yourself. You'll get there.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I know. Thank you so much for being here. So you all know where to find Andres. He's got his own platform and his own site. And of course, you can find me on my platform and on my website. So what we ask you to do is to like, comment, follow, and subscribe. We really do need your subscriptions because we can bring amazing guests like this to you, and you can, get all of these amazing, tidbits about how to be a disruptor yourself, how to fail gracefully, walk through the fire, and be amazing, just like Ana Valencia. So we want to thank you for being here on this episode again with Disrupt the Podcast with Andres and me. See you later.
Ciao.